All right, cool. So my name is Max Brody. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Scent, which you may or may not have heard of. I'm going to go a little bit over what Scent is, and then I'm going to sort of spiral into sort of some advice or some things I've learned along the way of starting an Ethereum-based project and growing a team, raising funding, actually making it a thing in the world, and sort of how we're thinking about attempting to transcend this community and kind of try to pierce the mainstream world. So we'll get to that at the end. But to start, I want to start with our mission, and it's kind of a big mission. What it really comes down to is right now there's sort of this implied default substructure to human life that you have to wake up, you've got to go somewhere, you've got to do something for someone, and after a certain amount of time, they'll give you money that you can then, pay your rent with and buy food with. And in a lot of ways, this structure is breaking down. Machines, code, all these things are starting to replace jobs that historically have, given people a sense of security and a sense of certainty about each day. And so as these machines and code take jobs, if you really plot it out and think about it, which jobs are these machines and code taking? They're really the jobs that don't require some amount of creativity, or they're very sequential jobs. So if you work at Starbucks, if you sort of take a drink order, mix the drink, smile, hand the drink back, that's pretty much already code that you're just doing as a human. And so that type of job obviously will be replaced. The only jobs that won't be replaced, again, are those that require creativity, or as we like to think about it, require some aspect of your unique perspective on the world. So that's sort of one of the axioms going into this. The other axiom is that where we put our perspective right now is in what we now think of as social networks. We sort of put our little, hey, check out this sidewalk angle that I took, or, hey, this is my brother's child at our family, whatever. Like we put all those things in our social networks and then we share them out, and it's unclear what we're doing or why we're doing it. Is it for sort of a sense of creating our own identity? Is it just trying to help our business or our personal brand? Is it actually expression? Are we just doing it because other people do it? And what we think is that what we look at now as social networks will actually become the main income sources for most people in really the near future. And already for certain people, social networks are their main income source. There's big YouTubers, there's obviously Instagram influencers of all kinds, but we think that's just the beginning of sort of the new norm. And with that notion, we have this sense that most of us are kind of already working for free. We're creating content. Like if you write an article for the Washington Post, they'll give you, a paycheck. If you write an article on Medium, you'll get some claps, maybe. I don't know, like that. Like but it's the same type of work. It's the same thing you're doing. You're typing, you're thinking, you're creating something new, and that always just felt odd. Like here we are creating something. Why is this not generating the same amount of personal financial value? So we sort of created a better way. This is like a vision of how a better structure could work. We think of it as the creation of incentive games, and what that essentially means is that everything is an incentive game already. So when you this is an incentive game. So a hackathon is an incentive game. You're coming here, and the incentives are to, show your skills, show your creativity, show your way of looking at things and your way of working with a team, for maybe some crypto credibility, maybe some experience, maybe some new friends, maybe some job opportunities. But there's all sorts of networked incentives built into our social interaction here. Sometimes incentives are very conscious and designed, and sometimes they're very unconscious and sort of just fallen into. But we've sort of taken on this notion of finding a way to take two elements, content creation and monetization and sort of a social network experience, and somehow tie those up in a way where the creator of content earns money, and also, which we'll get to in a second, the supporter of content also earns money in a way that doesn't rely on advertising and also doesn't rely on altruism or just kind of people being good. And that's not because we don't think people should be good, like you should be good, but it's more that people don't do that really by default. They kind of more often act out of pure self-interest, whether we like it or not, and so that's sort of a more interesting thing to work with because it's much more scalable. Okay, so what is Cent, and why that was sort of abstract. Let's get a little more concrete. So Cent is a pretty simple product, and it's actually one of the simplest Ethereum products I think that is out there now. It's also one of the first. So we launched the first version of the beta sort of the end of 2017, and the idea was you can create a post, okay? And on the post, you can sort of attach different types of incentive games or incentive structures that allow you to earn money and allow your supporters to earn money. Again, a post can be anything, be a blog, photo, video, a song, anything you'd like. And there's two main incentive structures that I want to dive into real quick. The first one is what we launched being middle of 2018. And since we launched this one, Cent has sort of really been taken to the next level. And essentially how it works is you look at a post, you think, that's a cool post. I think that's pretty interesting. And I also think that other people might think that that's a cool post. And that's a really unique way of looking at something. It's not just I like it, but I think other people will like it. And so what you can do is you can seed it with money, which means that you send money to it, and which, you know, in the parlance of this environment, you're sending ETH to an address, but you're not actually doing that. You're sort of just signing a transaction. The money gets sent. Part of the money goes to the content creator, and the rest of the money goes to everyone who came before you that gave money to the same post. So what it creates is kind of this cool structure where you're looking around at things, and you're essentially kind of betting, in a way, on the fact that someone is going to come after you and think that post is cool. I think more people are going to come after me. And so you look at a post, you seed it $2, you might leave, go have lunch, come back, and 4 people have seeded it after you. You've now made a profit of, let's say, $4. And your profit came from giving to something, which I think is really interesting. And I think it's sort of the beginning of some sort of new category of how things could be monetized. Because if you really break down how do humans, what are all the ways humans can possibly spend money in terms of categories of thing, there's really 3 ways. There's donating it, there's just giving it away. It's essentially you take money, you throw it into the abyss at some sort of direction that you think it deserves to go in, which is fine, which is great. There's purchasing or exchange, which is the most common way. Like I want this sandwich, I want this table, here's money, here's my table. And then there's a third tier, and the third tier is something that is certain humans have accessed and utilized all the time, but most people, I would say, don't normally interface with, and that's investing, or sort of placing money on a variety of different structures that you think will generate multiples of that money in the future. And right now, the world basically offers you the capacity to do that on, Fortune 500 companies, which, a lot of people just don't really understand that well. Like, I don't know the nuances of the quarterly earnings of Pepsi. Like, I don't have no idea how to assess that. And I don't think a lot of people do, especially when you're competing against algorithms from Goldman Sachs and whatnot. But looking at content and looking at a song, looking at a video and being like, this is going to be so much more popular a month from now, is a really easily digestible intuition about how something could be, how value could proliferate. And so we're really sort of based on that. And so again, this is just a quick illustration of how this seeding concept works. Content, fan 1 gives $1, fan 2 gives $1, part of it goes to fan 1, part of it goes to content, fan 3. And you can already imagine that this is not the hardest thing in the world to build. I mean, it's been fleshed out a lot, and now it's a lot more robust than it was when we started. But this is sort of just an idea, and it's an idea that you can only really build with a programmable blockchain. You can try to do this, which I tried in a previous thing, to build this purely out of fiat and like hack Stripe together to make stuff happen. But you run into a lot of legal issues and a lot of cost issues that if you build it on Ethereum and on other relevant chains, you're able to actually give people capacities that they couldn't have before. And that's another main point I want to make, is that there's a lot of people making, decentralized blank, this decentralized version of some app you've heard of. And I don't think most people care about that. They're already using the thing, the blank. They don't really care that it's decentralized. What the interesting part about all these technologies is the new stuff you can make that you just couldn't make before. And that'll really be what draws people in. And that's what leads to scale. It's more like what is fundamentally unlocked now. Our other main incentive structure is the one we started with, and it's still a big part of the Cent experience. It's called bountying. Essentially how that works is you can attach a financial reward for people to reply to your post. And so you can use that in a variety of ways. You could say, I need a logo for my band. It needs to have a banana in it. Here's a $5 reward. And then people will attempt to be that, provide the best logo. You could say, hey, sticking with the band example, you could say, hey, we just released this music video, watch it and give me a review. So you can make like hundreds of people watch your video and just sort of spark engagement. There's a lot of different ways you can utilize that. Oftentimes nowadays it's used in that second way of just kind of like a boosting, of like to get immediate exposure for whatever you want for just a couple bucks, which surprisingly you can't really do elsewhere. You can do it in the form of advertising. You can do it in the form of like a promoted tweet. But all that money, when you do like Facebook advertising or a promoted tweet, that money goes obviously to Twitter or to Facebook. With bountying, the money that you're putting up gets distributed to the best answers or the best replies. And the user base comes afterward and they vote on, this reply is better than this reply. So, say this reply gets 30% of the votes, it'll get 30% of the bounty. So it's a pretty simple system, but it works really well. And again, people are already making a bunch of money just with these two incentive mechanisms because they sort of utilize an element of technology, but also an element of psychology, which is another sort of underlying point I want to make, is that you can't stay. The really compelling projects are not just technical, pure, things. They're technical mixed with something human. But to jump into the technical, the way Cent works is we have an integrated custom wallet that we call Cent Wallet, and we have sort of built our own sort of state channel solution, and it's pretty simple. Essentially, a lot of the interactions between users happen in a state channel, and then we will settle on chain whenever they want to withdraw. So this is kind of how that works. So here's our app, users doing things, all off chain. So we kind of eliminate the need to wait on Ethereum to fix all of its relevant issues. And then occasionally we will actually settle on chain. And honestly, this feels like you kind of this is the way to do it. This is sort of the emergent structure, I feel like, of most dApps. It just makes by far the most sense to do it this way. When we first built Cent, like before we even released the beta, we built everything decentralized directly on chain, like literally everything, like the logo image was hosted on IPFS, every single pixel was decentralized, and we just wanted to see if we could. We could, and it was terrible because it was extremely slow. and just no one wants that. And also, what we realize is that people don't care. Again, it doesn't make any difference that your logo is on IPFS. And I think that we really broke it down and we're like, what actually matters? And for us, what actually matters is that you're earning a decentralized currency. So really, you just need an email and password, and you can get up and start earning money, which is cool. But few other things do. Right now, the content itself is not hosted in a decentralized way. And there's no immediate plans to do that because there's not, right now, I don't think that that's the most compelling thing to normal people. I think within maybe 5 years, when that starts getting just as fast as using AWS, perhaps it will be. But for right now, I still think that the currency element and the ability to actually retain financial value in a relatively decentralized way, I think is more interesting. All right, that's just me and Cameron. In terms of how we make money, and in terms of how I think a lot of things should make money, in terms of anything you build here or elsewhere, is just taking a percentage of the transactions. And I think that what's cool about that is that you don't have to, you're already dealing with money. Like because people are using, in our context, if they're using Cent, they're already moving money around, because that's the whole game, is you're moving money around. And so instead of having this additional step of being like, okay, now we're gonna charge you blah, blah, blah per month, we're just gonna take like a tiny slice of every time you move money around. And it feels fair, it feels, it feels like a way of monetizing that is just honest and scalable, and actually provides a really great margin because you'll make more the more the core app functionality is used, which seems like it aligns incentives again quite well. So we're live right now. We've got over 20,000 users in a bunch of different countries. We're featured in all these things, and I think I now want to sort of turn into sort of what I've learned so far about launching a thing and actually making it sort of get seen by normal folks. Well, these two. And how to do that. And I think the big first thing I want to say is you don't need a white paper. You need users. You need people to actually like do the thing. And I think there's a lot of the crypto world is just very into itself, which is great, and it's a community and it's beautiful. But no one is reading these things outside of people that just kind of enjoy reading them in the same way certain people enjoy comic books. So it's just sort of mentally stimulating for certain people. But at the end of the day, the way anything scales is someone has a need, or someone hears about something from a friend, and then they try it, and they're like, oh, this is cool. They don't say, okay, now let me, this makes me want to read a 30-page essay on it. Like no one says that. And so, especially when we were starting in 2017, we had a lot of people telling us this is what we should be spending all our time on. And we were like, no, we're just going to do this. And so far, that's proved really good for us. And I kind of think that's best for everyone. The vision itself needs to transcend crypto, I think, because crypto is like it reminds me of the early 70s, not that I was around, but the sort of early PC era, when personal computers were just emerging. It was a very hobbyist thing. You had your nerds, you had your people like hacking stuff together, and like the homebrew computer clubs, and they were all very into it. But there were certain computer companies at the time where the vision was to make microprocessors, something that's just about the technology itself, versus like the visions of Apple and Microsoft, which is just like let anyone make their shopping list on their desk in their living room. Like something that's completely unrelated to any technological anything. It's using the technology for some immediately understandable human goal. And that's really how technology always works. It's not like, hey, we have a wheel. What can we do with the wheel? It's more like, you don't have to use your horse anymore. Here's a car. And so it's the vision itself. When I see a vision that's just we're a decentralized something, that's a purely crypto vision. It's just like let's cryptoify something. which might work for the crypto community, but the broader world just doesn't, I haven't found resonates with that at all. And the vision needs to mix the emotional with the technical. Now, if you're doing a purely technical thing, that's great, but I would sort of challenge you to find like what is the emotion in it. Like if it's say it's something for developers, or when it's really deep in there, it's really low level. What effect, for instance, will that have on the developer's sort of mental workflow? Like what sort of space will that open up for them so that they can be more creative in some other way? Just in some way to get it, because there's other industries where it's pretty much all emotional and not technical. And it's usually, I feel like, the opposite. Like there's very little substance and there's a lot of fluff. And I kind of feel like with crypto, it's very technical and it's very interesting what's happening computationally, but then there's less of a sense of how to present something in a way that resonates with people, or that people even understand remotely what it does. And so if you're not that person to bring that emotional element, consider, rather than another game theorist or cryptographer, like some sort of emotional person to come in and give sort of that tinge to it. Okay, another big one. Everyone hates browser extensions. That's one that's been our main one. And I think that affects each stuff in particular. We had this this whole movement internal to the company that we called Kill the Fox, which is referring to MetaMask. And because I would find that I would, part of the reasons I moved to Los Angeles from San Francisco is that San Francisco is a very niche place. It's like everyone's into tech, it's like not a good approximation of the world. And LA is also a weird place, but it seems like it's a more, you look at someone on the street and you don't automatically know that they are doing something tech related. They're probably not. And so in sort of talking with more normal-ish people, I start to show them sort of the UX and UI of a lot of dApps, and it's the second they have to I'm like, oh, then you just download this Chrome extension, and they're like, what do you mean? I have to leave and download this thing that is not branded at all like the thing I'm using? Like, how am I supposed to know to do that? Like, how do I, why is this fox looking at my cursor? Like there's a lot of, there's so many things that just don't make sense to people. And I think that the key is that if we're here at this hackathon, our sort of brains work like this, where we can sort of, okay, yeah, you just download the extension, just put the address in. It seems so intuitive, but those are not jumps that normal people make at all. And that leads to this, which is that normally people are like, okay, you just take, this address and you put it here. That's like the main crypto difficulty. Why can't you do that? And you can't do that because basically nowhere else in life do we ask people to do that, to see like a string of random characters and deal with that in some way, and especially in a way where they could lose money if they mess it up. And I think that that's really the essence of all of this. Is, in my mind, the UX of crypto things won't be mainstream until you never see a string. If as soon as you're seeing a string, you're bringing someone down in there. Again, for pro people, for you want that because you want to know what's happening. But it's in the same way that some people hear their car go like, and they're like, oh, I gotta get a carburetor. And they know like what to look for in a carburetor. Most people are just like, fix it, I'll be back. And that's, again, what I think we gotta think about in the context of building stuff for actual people, is they don't wanna see strings, they want big, like round buttons. They don't want anything that they could mess up. And building that into the vision of the product at the start, going back to the users thing, will probably get more of those, which will probably get you more insight as to whether people are even liking it, which will allow you to build a team, allow you to raise money, allow you to do more interesting technical things if that's ultimately what you want to do. Sort of in the theme of the whole talk, but just as a sort of reiteration, no one's gonna learn this stuff. There's not gonna be this moment where culture is just like, okay, now
we're all engaging with these. It's going to feel almost, in my view, almost identical to how it is now. It's just like new plumbing. And the trick is to somehow install the new plumbing without them knowing that new plumbing is there. It's just like, oh, it works nice. Oh, and I don't have to deal with the government. And oh, why didn't I have to put my other information in? That was nice. That was quick. And so giving people new capacities, but not necessarily selling them on just the fact that the plumbing is different, just keeps showing them via new function. And so this is, last point I think, is about staying flexible, okay? Because I meet a lot of people in crypto are sort of encamped in their, it's all about Bitcoin, it's all about Ethereum, it's all about EOS, it's all about whatever it may be, and obviously probably a lot of us are, it's all about Ethereum. But ultimately it should be about like you want to do something, and then like this is the best way to do the thing. And so the mission should stay the same, but this should change. Ideally you shouldn't have the same stack even every like 6 months or definitely 12 months. I think if you, especially right now, if you have the same stack you had 12 months ago, probably you're vulnerable security-wise. Probably it's slower than it could be. Probably there's all sorts, like humans, like right now, products are being launched like as we speak. Who knows what just got released like in the last 10 minutes? Like there's all sorts of stuff happening. And so I think staying up on this, and I think for Cent, what we've been recently doing is really hitting the UX front hard. So now, for instance, you don't need to use MetaMask. You can just log in with email and password. It all works within the browser itself. You don't need any extensions or anything. And I think we set that as a major intention to eliminate that step, basically by just constantly scanning for every technology that was possibly being built that could do that. And eventually finding a company, and we ended up partnering with this company called Fortmatic that does that. But ultimately, it's this state of mind of like, each day you wake up and there might be a new superpower that you could install. You just gotta find it. So, leave you with this. You don't really know anything. You might have intuitions, but in terms of what people will actually use, you kind of just gotta do it. Like, push it out there. Don't write about it. Don't just do it. And then you change it. You sort of see what they do and you evolve it. But this is really the only cheat code to things. It's just like, do it, change it, do it, change it. And if you love what you're doing, you'll have the energy to keep changing it until it's a thing. Cool. Thank you.